These male politicians are pushing for women who received abortions to be punished with prison time. Republican Danny McCormick, ROR City, speaks on his bill HB 813 concerning abortion during legislative session Thursday, May 12, 2022, in the House chambers of the Louisiana State Capitol in Baton Rouge. La Hillary Shuinuk, the advocate via AP. CNN, a businessman turned state representative from rural Oil City, Louisiana, and Baptiste Pastor banded together earlier this year on the radical mission. They were adamant that the woman who received the abortion should receive the same criminal consequences as the one who drowns her baby. Under a bill under a bill they promoted, pregnant people could face murder charges even if they were raped or doctors determined the procedure was needed to save their own life. Doctors who attempt to help a patient conceive through in vitro fertilization, a fertility treatment used by millions of Americans, could also be locked up for destroying embryos, and certain contraception, such as Plan B, would be banned. The taking of the life is murder and it is illegal, State Republican Danny McCormick told the committee of state lawmakers who considered the bill in May, right after the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade was leaked. No compromised. No more waiting. Brian Gunter, the pastor who suggested McCormick be the one who introduced the registration, told the committee. Louisiana State Republican Danny McCormick, Pastor Brian Gunter, and Anthony Bradley Pierce right to left, argued state lawmakers to move their bill HB 813 out of committee earlier this year. Only four people spoke against the bill during the committee meeting, all women. They pleaded with the lawmakers to grasp the gravity of the proposed restrictions, which went further than any state abortion law currently on the books, and warned of unintended consequences. We need to take a deep breath, said Melissa Flor, Flournoy, Flournoy, a former state representative who runs the progressive advocacy group, the 10,000 Women Louisiana. He said the bill would only punish women and that there wasn't enough responsibility being placed on men. But in the end, only one man and one woman, an independent and Democrat, voted against it in the committee. Seven men on the committee, all Republicans, voted in favor of the bill, moving it one step closer to becoming law. Men at the helm. A faction of self proclaimed abortionists were seeking to make abortion laws more restrictive and the consequences of having the procedure more punitive than ever before. Unburdened unburdened by the overturning of Roe v. Wade, they said they will not be satisfied until fetuses are given the same protections as all US citizens, meaning that if abortion is illegal, then criminal status should be applied accordingly. While major national anti abortion groups say they do not support the criminalizing women, the idea is gaining traction with certain conservative lawmakers and activists and politicians leading the charge are nearly always men, CNN found. This year, three male lawmakers from Indiana attempted to wipe out existing abortion regulations and to change the state criminal status to apply at the time of fertilization. In Texas, five male lawmakers authored a bill last year that would have made getting an abortion punishable by the death penalty if it had gone into law. A state representative in Arizona introduced registration that included homicide charges, saying in the Facebook video that anyone who undergoes an abortion deserves to spend some time in the Arizona penal system. And the male Kansas lawmaker proposed a bill that would amend the state constitution in allow abortion laws to pass without exception for the life of the mother. While most in the anti-abortion movement believe that human life begins at conception, abortionists are particularly uncompromising in how they act on their beliefs, comparing abortion to the Holocaust and using inflammatory terms such as slaughter and murder to describe the medical procedure that most Americans believe should be illegal in all or most cases. Bradley Pierce, the attorney who helped draft the Louisiana bill, said his organization has been involved with many of the abolition bills that have been introduced in more than a dozen states. All of these proposed legislation would make it possible for women seeking abortions to face criminal charges. An overwhelming majority of Americans said in a Pew Research Center poll they don't believe men should have a greater say on abortion policy. But that is what is happening. Experts told CNN that the male dominance fits within the anti-abortion movement, current framing as being focused on the fetal personhood and the fetal right as opposed to maternal right. Eric Schwank, an Arizona State University professor who has studied gender differences in anti-abortion activists, activist said his research found that while men aren't necessarily are more likely to consider themselves to be pro-life than women, they are more willing to take the adamant stance of the no abortion under any conditions. The most restrictive bills, which don't include the explicit life of the mother exceptions and would charges those who received abortions with homicide, have failed to make it to the full vote needed for passage, but others that prohibit abortions, even in case of rape and incest, have taken hold in around a dozen states, including Missouri, Alabama, and Tennessee, according to a Guttmacher Institute. Those laws, CNN found, are also overwhelmingly passed into law by male legislators, while female Republicans almost always voted in favor of the legislation. Gender imbalances within state legislators, as well as the fact that female lawmakers are more likely to be Democrats, fuels the voting gap, and the male Democratic lawmakers are far more likely than female Democrats to cross the aisle to vote in favor of the abortion bans, according to CNN's analysis. The Texas Heartbeat Act, for example, outlawed nearly all abortions in the state when it criminalized the procedure as soon as the heartbeat could be detected, as early as 6 weeks of pregnancy. While men made up nearly three quarters of the 177 lawmakers who voted, nearly 90% of those who voted in favor of the bill are men, encouraging sacrificial behavior. Scott Herndon, a beard-eyed man and the father of eight, once believed the abortion was the issue that should be discussed between the woman and her physician. He remembers watching the classic 80s movie Fast Times at Richmond High and being relatively ambivalent about the fact that one of the characters received the abortion. He didn't become a Christian until 1996. The same year, he drove his pregnant girlfriend along the streets of the San Francisco on his motorcycle. The pregnancy was unexpected, but their life development, along with the newfound religious practice, led Herndon to spend a lot of thinking about the miraculous nature of life. Over the years, he began to feel compelled to get involved within the anti-abortion movement. His daughter is now 25, and he and his wife went on to have seven more children. A long-time member of the Idaho Republicans, he told CNN he decides to run for state senate this year with the mission of fighting government encroachment. Herndon, who taught his competitive shooting experience in his high school and college, is the staunch supporter of the right to bear arms and strongly opposes the vaccine mandate. He described himself as the true family values conservative, noting that his son help him with his home building business, while his five daughters live on the family farm, milking cows and raising chickens and pigs. One of his long-term goals, if elected, he said, is to abolish abortion in the state. Success depends on the change in heart and mind, he said. I liken the effort to Martin Luther King Jr.'s civil rights movement for desegregation and the equal treatment of African Americans. This comparison is one that abortion rights activists take a serious issue with. Let's be clear, appropriating the word abolition is particularly contemptuous. The spokesperson for Planned Parenthood Federation of America said in a statement to CNN. That word is a symbol of freedom, and this group wants to put people behind the bars for exercising their right to bodily autonomy. Official rights demonstrators gathered outside the U.S. Supreme Court after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Herndon, however, says women should embrace their institutional, instinctual, instinctual sacrificial behavior. If a mother is in a life raped with a child and there is only enough food and water to save one, I'm guessing most mothers would not throw their child overboard and drown them, he said in an interview with CNN. When asked about the medical circumstances where the doctor may deem abortion necessary to save the woman's life, such as the cancer diagnosis and that requires the aggressive treatment. As part of their effort to abolish abortion, which is generally defined as the termination of the pregnancy, Herndon and others in the anti-abortion movement are attempting to redefine the term to the intentional killing of the fetus. That way, they claim the lives of the mothers could still be saved as long as doctors make an equal attempt to save the fetus. Gunter, meanwhile, said he disagreed with the medical establishment and does not believe abortion is ever medically necessary. The doctors point to the variety of medical situations where the abortion may be needed to protect a pregnant person's life. Medical and legal experts told CNN this is a dangerous and inaccurate claim, saying there are plenty of situations that could result in women dying or being put through unnecessary bodily harm. The explicit exceptions for the health and the life of a mother are not included in the laws regulating abortion. Louis King, a gynecologist surgeon and professor at Harvard Medical School, said that the claims are disingenuous at best and intentional dissemination, dissemination of misinformation at worst, and questioned why they can't simply trust medical professionals to do their job. Most of these arguments are attempts to impose a minority religious view on the majority of our citizens, she said. This is not a matter of belief or opinion. This is a highly inappropriate way to use our restorative system. An immediate abortion may be needed if a pregnant person's water breaks before 20 weeks, King said, or when patients have pre existing conditions that could lead to heart or liver failure, or they need aggressive treatment for the disease like cancer that will severely harm, if not destroy, the fetus. An equal attempt to save the fetus would require the putting the life of the pregnant person at risk, she said, adding that it's also not a well established standard of care. Doctors also note that abortion bans take away a patient's ability to make decisions about their own health and pregnancy, sometimes forcing them to endure pregnancies and deliveries of fetuses that will not survive. Stories like this are already making headlines as laws become increasingly restrictive. In some cases, doctors are already afraid to perform abortions in cases where a mother's health is at risk, even with the so called life of the mother exceptions in place. In Texas, one woman learned that her baby had heart, lung, brain, kidney, and genetic defect, and would either be stillborn or die within minutes of that birth. At the same time, doctors warned her that carrying the baby to term threatened her own life. But she says she was still refused an abortion by doctors who said it could run afoul of the state's strict 6 week abortion ban. She said she ultimately drove 10 hours to a New Mexico abortion clinic to undergo the procedure. I'm still so angry and hurt about it that I can hardly see straight, she wrote on Facebook the next day. Another Texas woman spoke out about being forced to carry her dad's fetus for weeks after suffering a miscarriage. In Louisiana, a woman carrying a fetus without a skull was reportedly not allowed to get an abortion, while another was reportedly denied an abortion and is instead forced into hours of labor when her water broke at 16 weeks, long before the fetus was viable. Idaho State Senate candidate Scott Herndon supports a total abortion ban in the state. Herndon agrees that the health of the pregnant woman should be considered, but he worries that the medical community automatically prioritizes the mother's life and does not treat the fetus as the person until birth, saying this needs to change. And he said that while locking out women is not his object, it only makes sense that for homicide charges to apply to a woman who chooses to undergo an abortion if a fetus is given equal protections under the law. As chair of his country's Republican Party, he attended the Idaho Republican Convention in July and proposed the official change to party platform in support of the amendment to the state constitution that would strengthen the rights of the fetuses. After it easily passed the vote, the fellow Republican delegate took the floor with a proposal that was not met with the same support. She wanted to make sure an exception, as included in the party platform for abortions needed for the woman's physical and mental health, Herndon recounted. A heated debate ensued, with Herndon describing the proposal as not carefully crafted and unnecessary. The proposal was ultimately rejected by the margin of nearly 3 to 1, according to a news report. Idaho Republican Party did not respond to requests for comment. No exceptions. Back in 2019, a bill that would criminalize the abortion even in cases of rape and incest was placed in front of the Alabama's legislature, a move so extreme that the number of high-profile Republicans initially said it went too far. When the bill reaches the state Senate, 25 male legislators voted on party lines to enact it, and the state's female governor signed it into law. The federal judge blocked it from taking effect, but it had immediately domino effect as other states followed suit. Most of the laws, including near total abortion bans known as trigger laws and 6 week heartbeat bills, weren't able to take effect at the time either. But they are being implemented across the country now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. This wave of unprecedented restrictions shows the power of the anti abortion movement and how the Republican Party has shifted to appeal to the small but fervent group of the voters, experts said. The idea that a fully human life with full moral worth begins at the conception is not an extreme view in the pro life movement, said Jad Munson, a sociology professor at Lehigh University, who has researched the movement of both sides of the abortion debate. The real issue is the degree of power the movement has over the Republican Party in the political arena, where such viewpoints have, at least until recently, been outside the mainstream. Anti-abortion protesters gathered at the Indiana state capitol this summer. And in recent years, a particular brand of Republican candidate has become more prominent. On that touch, the big lie that the 2020 election was stolen doesn't trust the science and consider themselves to be Christian nationalists, said Mary Ziegler, a law professor at the University of California, Davis. Even a more moderate candidate may feel that they have to toe the line in what the anti abortion movement is saying and what the movement wants is change, said Ziegler, who has studied the anti abortion movement influence on US politics. So, who you are catering to if your Republican Party's change? As a result, she said that what would have previously been considered a disqualifying stance on abortion for the most voters is one of the issues now being used by the growing number of Republican candidates for state and federal office in the hopes of securing their party's nomination. During the primary season earlier this year, two of the leading Republican candidates for governor of Pennsylvania said in a debate that they support banning abortion under any circumstances, including if the mother's life is at risk. I don't give way to exceptions, said Don Mastriano, who will be on the ticket in November to succeed the incumbent Democratic Governor Tom Wolf, who has spotted a number of abortion bans passed by the Republican controlled state legislature. Men running for a number of statewide offices in Georgia have also vocalized their support of total abortion bans. There's no exceptions in my mind. Former football star Hester Walker, a Republican who is running for the U.S. Senate, told the reporters. Mastriano and Walker have not expressed support for prosecuting women who have abortions. They did not respond to CNN's request for comment. While an overwhelming majority of Americans support legalized abortion when a woman's life or health is at risk, Ziegler said that the disappearing life of the mother exception stems from a deep distrust of both women, science, and the medical establishment. The new focus on punishing women for undergoing abortions, as seen in several bills recently proposed, is also only likely to intensify, she said, as abortion providers close to shop in states with bans. It is going to become increasingly difficult to charge doctors if a woman travels to other states for the procedure. That's going to making it more appearing to punish women, Ziegler said. Abortionist, not pro-life. For Pastor Gunter in Louisiana, the pro-life establishment is not taking a hard enough stand against abortion. He told CNN he doesn't think someone can be truly pro-life while also believing that the abortion is acceptable in certain circumstances. He said he will support nothing short of the all-out abortion ban with the homicide charges, and that, unlike some of his peers, he refused to sacrifice his principles for political reasons. Gunter, who grew up in church in diasporas and is now in his 30s, said in a recent speech that he once believed that opposing abortion simply meant voting for pro-life candidates. But when a seminary professor invited him and the other men to spread the gospel outside the abortion clinic in 2008, he said everything changed. Pastor Brian Gunter said that he approached the Republican Danny McCormick about the Louisiana bill that included homicide charges for women who received their abortions. That day, he said he watched the 15 women go inside the clinic and murder their children. One of them, Gunter said, could have been older than 13, and he believed she was being forced to undergo the procedure by her mother. She is the child, and her mother pulled her into the clinic, said Gunter. That day changed my life. I went home and I was newly married. My wife was pregnant with our first child. I've been seeing ultrasound pictures of my son, and I thought to myself, my God, someone killed the children just like my son. Same age as my son, looks like my son. How can they do that? After that, he says he began confronting women as they entered the abortion clinics every week, and in an attempt to create a more sweeping change, he decides to go involved politically. He said he approached the Republican McCormick, who did not respond to CNN's request for comment earlier this year about the Louisiana bill that ended up making waves across the country. It even sparked the outrage from the largest anti abortion group in the state, one that Gunter said he had worked for, for but recently parted ways with parted ways with because he felt he wasn't doing enough to outlaw abortion. Gunter's impatient plea plea at the committee hearing in May was met with applause, and the vote in favor of moving the bill to the full House ultimately came down to the group of state lawmakers that included a former law enforcement officer, a criminal defense and personal injury attorney, and the entrepreneur who makes the living designing man craves and selling game room furniture. Anti-abortionists gathered at the Louisiana state capitol in support of the bill that would charge pregnant people who could receive the abortions with the mother. Lawmakers gathered on the House floor to debate the bill while dozens of supporters gathered outside the chambers in what resembled a church service, reciting Bible passages and swaying together while singing hymns such as Amazing Grace. Jeff Durbin, an Arizona based pastor and the head of the Christian production company Apollosia Studios, which has more than 300,000 subscribers on YouTube, emceed and live streamed the event. Durbin, who once played Michelangelo and Donatello in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise and became fervently religious after overdosing on ecstasy, is now unapologetically seeking to criminalize and eliminate all forms of aversion without exception. He did not respond to request for comment. He and five other men addressed the crowds at the state capitol, citing proverb and describing women who get abortion as murderers. We have a righteous bill that punishes those who choose to murder their children. T. Russell Hunter, the founder of anti-abortion group Free the State, yelled into the microphone, saying that any truly pro-life law should hold the pregnant woman accountable for their decisions, not just the medical providers. Abortionists do not wake up and go out into the culture looking for children to kill. Mothers bring their babies to them to be murdered. They are guilty. They have murdered their children under the color of law and the law God hates. Hunter's group described itself as abortionist, not pro-life, echoing Gunter's argument that many in the movement are compromising on their values, while many who call themselves pro-life agree with us that abortion is murder. Free the state right on each website. Abortion has not been opposed by the pro-life political establishment in the manner consistent with it being murder. Hunter told CNN this movement is not about wanting to punish a woman or something silly like that, and that anyone involved in the decision to terminate the pregnancy should face criminal charges, including fathers. Pray for the restorators here, Durbin, who also runs End Abortion Now, said at the Capitol rally. But the time the prayers went unfulfilled. Inside the House chamber, one of seven men to initially vote in favor of the proposed restoration, Republican Alan Shevog, a Republican who described himself as pro-life, apologized for his vote. He said he believed the bill was unconstitutional, makes criminals out of women. Other Republican lawmakers and anti-abortion advocates in the state also came out hard against the bill, saying it went too far, including state representative who said her grandson wouldn't exist if it wasn't for in vitro fertilization. The bill never went to the full vote. It was the first time such an extreme anti-abortion measure made it out of any state committee. However, and the Booker of opposition has not deterred Gunter. He plans to work with McCormick, the Louisiana lawmaker, to introduce the similar bill next year. Momentum, he told CNN, is only building in the wake of the Supreme Court's recent decision.